If you said to yourself, what can J.D. Vance do aside from being horribly uncharismatic, aside from having no idea how to order donuts or talk to people, aside from bringing not a single voter to Donald Trump's base? If you said to yourself, what else could he do to hurt Donald Trump if he was really trying to torpedo his campaign? It would be to give interviews like he gave to Kristen Welker on NBC News yesterday, where every single controversy he is asked to clarify, he either comes off as completely inauthentic and dishonest, or just says horrible things that nobody would hear and say, that sounds really good to me. Kristen Welker somehow, this interview was meant to, let's clear things up. Let's reposition J.D. Vance as a voice of reason and sanity. Let's defend the idea that he should stay on the ticket instead of being replaced by RFK Jr. now that Jr. has endorsed Trump. Kristen Welker asks, why is Donald Trump casting doubt on the election even before it happened? Trump saying they can only win if they cheat. And J.D. has nothing other than that's not what he's doing. That's not what he's doing. Oh, boy.
Move on to something that Donald Trump said in North Carolina and yet again Friday night.
Our primary focus is not to get out the vote. It's to make sure they don't cheat, because we have all the votes you need. You can see it.
Why is Donald Trump casting doubt on the election before it's even happened?
I don't think that's what Donald Trump is doing.
Well, that's what he's doing. That's what he says here. We need to make sure they don't cheat.
I think that what he's saying is that we want to pursue a set of policies in the Republican Party that make it easier for every legal ballot to be cast.
That is not at all what Trump is saying.
Counted, but make it harder for illegally cast ballots to be counted. Now, we can disagree about how many of those there are, whether there are a few hundred, a few thousand, maybe more. But just in the last week, just in the last week, once in Arizona and once in Pennsylvania, there were major court wins that make our ballot process more secure and more effective. I think that.
Great. Well, then there'd be no reason to say Democrats can only win if they cheat, right?
What Donald Trump is talking about is we have to pursue, sometimes through litigation, sometimes through better policy at the state or national level.
So you get it. Now, I think J.D. Vance is a complete and total disaster. I have 1% of me that actually feels bad that every single interview he has to try to clean up what Trump has said. Now, often he's having to clean up what he himself has said, and we will get to that. But every single interview, Trump is saying such demented things that J.D. Vance is in the position to have to clean it up. Now, that what he is trying to clean up, he's cleaning it up with lies. Trump has said directly, totally clearly, the only way that Democrats can win is if they cheat. So that is saying in advance that this is going to be yet another stolen election per Trump. Every election he loses is stolen per Trump. Kristen Welker brings up J.D. Vance's childless cat lady comment and says that was a gut punch to women. And he says that it is not high on the list of things he regrets. But he doesn't seem to deny that he regrets it to a degree. Sort of like the worst of both worlds. He doesn't take it back. And he also kind of acknowledges a little bit of regret. Sort of like, okay, so you know it was a bad comment, and yet you're not taking it back. Yikes.
And you're calling it a sarcastic comment.
Sure.
And yet some women, and you got the feedback in real time, felt like it was a gut punch to them personally. Do you regret making that comment?
Look, I regret certainly that a lot of people took it the wrong way, and I certainly regret.
Okay, did you see what he just did? I really regret all of the people that took my comment the wrong way. It's their fault. I apologize if anyone was completely wrongly offended by what I say.
The DNC and Kamala Harris lied about it.
But do you regret what you said, Senator?
Look, Kristen, I'm going to say things from time to time that people disagree with. I'm a real person. I'm going to make jokes. I'm going to say things sarcastically.
By the way, his jokes are terrible. He has no sense of humor.
And I think that what's important is that we focus on the policy. There are certainly going to be things that I say, if I'm elected vice president, that people are going to say, well, I wish he had said that differently.
Kristen, you'd better be prepared that day in and day out, if the country is unlucky enough that I end up in this role, I am going to be saying things just like this.
I think it's most important to actually be the person I actually am and to say those sarcastic comments were made in the service of a real substantive point. This country has become too anti-family. It's too expensive to afford a house. It's too expensive to afford groceries. Donald Trump and I want to change that. And unless we get better leadership, we're not going to.
But again, just very quickly, Given that people have told you directly, have spoken out, have said that they were offended, they were hurt by those comments, do you wish you never made those childless cat lady comments?
I think that it's much more important for me to just be a normal human being who sometimes says things that people disagree with. I have a lot of regrets, Kristen, but making a joke 3 years ago is not in the top 10 of the list.
It's not a top regret, but he's not denying it's a regret. But he's also saying he's going to continue saying stuff like that. I don't think I've seen a politician get worse and worse at being interviewed as he gets more and more high profile interviews and the stakes go higher, higher, higher. Kristen Welker asked about Trump's tariffs, which left wing, right wing, centrist, independent economists, they all agree it will make the budget of the average family cost more. Whether we believe it's worth it, okay, but Trump's tariffs will make things more expensive. And JD just kind of goes, no, it won't do that.
So when Kamala Harris says, if we do the thing that Trump already did, it's going to be way worse than it was last time, I just don't think that makes a lot of sense.
Well, let's talk about Trump's record during his first term. He did impose rounds of tariffs, and it cost Americans nearly $80 billion in new taxes. Do you acknowledge that imposing more tariffs will ultimately cost consumers?
Well, what it really does is it penalizes importers from bringing goods outside the country into the country. And I think that's just a necessary thing. We know that China and a number of other countries are using effectively slave labor to undercut the wages of American workers. Donald Trump thinks that has to stop. And again, what Kamala Harris is saying, Kristen, is that if you do this, you're somehow going to cause skyrocketing inflation. In reality, Donald Trump already did it. He brought a lot of jobs back, and it didn't cause inflation.
But it caused consumers to pay more. They paid more in taxes, $80 billion worth. Do you acknowledge that consumers ultimately will pay more if there are more tariffs imposed?
So economists...
Do you just acknowledge that?
No, I don't, Kristen, because I think economists really disagree about the effects of tariffs because there can be a dynamic effect, right? So
yeah, it is absolutely true that the strongest argument for tariffs is a dynamic effect. Dynamic effect means we can measure what a change in a tax or a tariff would do, assuming we make the change and no one's behavior changes. That's not a dynamic analysis. Dynamic would be, hey, what if you tax millionaires in this one state? You can't just calculate the amount of money you would get because some of them would move out of state. Now, in most cases, when we actually run the numbers, you still collect more tax revenue. But it is true, you need to dynamically analyze it. The strongest argument against tariffs is you impose the tariffs on the imported goods. The American companies doing the importing would have to pay that tariff. What they would do by dynamically reacting is say, oh, you know what? In order to avoid the tariff, I'm going to get this product domestically. The reason that it doesn't work out that way is because our supply chains, as we found out during COVID, can't make a 180. You can't turn on a dime, right? Like my Pontiac Firebird that I got as my first car when I got a license. That car could turn on a dime. And the economy doesn't do that. Supply chains don't do that. So there may be some longer term dynamic effect if we decide to bring the supply chains back home where you don't exactly see the effect that but that's at the long term. In the immediate, economists right, left, and center have said Trump's tax plan will lead to higher prices for the middle class because a lot of these things that we would be tariffing, you can't really get conveniently anywhere else in the immediate. So he's just lying or he's incompetent. A great combination, very common. MAGA, lying, incompetent, or both, you can't tell. Finally, Kristen Welker asks JD Vance about Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s claims that vaccines cause autism and antidepressants cause school shootings, and that he is just not sure about what happened on 9/11. And JD Vance goes, we have disagreements.
Let's move on. Robert F. Kennedy, the big news yesterday.
Very big news.
He suspended his campaign, announced he's endorsing Donald Trump.
JD's like, yeah, it's so big, I might be kicked off the ticket.
He is also known as someone who has blamed vaccines for autism, antidepressants for school shootings, and recently said, quote, he won't take sides on what happened on 9/11. Do you have any hesitation about accepting his endorsement?
No, Kristen, I don't, because we're going to disagree on issues, right? There are things that Robert Kennedy has said that I disagree with. I'm sure there are things that he's said, or that I've said, that he's going to disagree with. But I think what his endorsement represents is that Donald J. Trump's Republican Party is a big tent party. I was raised...
Not at all. Because he was just as willing to endorse Kamala Harris, right? That statement might fly if RFK was only willing to endorse Trump, but that's not the case. He was also willing to sell out an endorsement to Kamala Harris in exchange for a role in her administration. So what the endorsement represents, given that it was available to whoever wanted it, to the highest bidder, is that his motives are, of course, self-centered, not what's best for the country, and that he's willing to just go with whoever gives him the best deal. Now, all of this aside, all of this J.D. Vance interview aside, there was one other part that's so fascinating that we're going to deal with it separately, and that's what J.D. Vance said about an abortion ban. Did you know there is only one VPN fully optimized for streaming 4K video and downloading large files? That's our sponsor, Private Internet Access. A VPN hides your IP address, allows you to make it look like your device is anywhere in the world. So this lets you stream content on Netflix and Hulu and HBO Max, not normally available in your home country. For instance, the show Friends is not available on Netflix in the US, but when I change my IP address to the UK, I can watch Friends on Netflix and a ton of other awesome content I would otherwise miss out on without lag and without buffering. Private internet access is also faster than other VPNs for file sharing, so you can download anonymously, but without the long wait times. Anyone can use private internet access. Just turn it on once and forget about it. No special knowledge required. And you can use it on all of your devices, TV, phone, tablet, computer. Private internet access is giving my audience 83% off, which comes out to just $203 a month, plus 4 extra months for free. Go to piavpn.com/Pacman. The link is down below.